Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone. This is the Capital Projects Committee meeting, October the 6th, 5 p.m. It is 5 p.m., so we will begin. I'd like to thank the members of the board for being here. We have two that can't make it tonight. One, Mr. Campbell, is out ill, and Mr. Skidmore had a previous engagement. But we do have a quorum. First, I would like for you to look at the agenda that's in front of you. I have one change that I would like to take out: Anderson Lane improvements. And the reason that was not in the budget. So we'll take that out of discussion tonight. And let me see if there's any other projects that any of the other board members would like to add to that list.
We could add the update on the light at 386 at exit 3. Is that exit 3, right? 386 and Center Point.
Got it.
Thank you. Just a quick update.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, if not, I will accept, or I will ask for a motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes were just put in front of you, so I'm not going to ask you to vote on those tonight. We'll vote on those next time. I apologize for not getting them to you earlier. I've reviewed them and they look okay, but it's not appropriate to ask you to vote without having the chance to peruse them. Ordinances and resolutions. I don't have any ordinances or resolution. Well, we may have on the inline hockey, but let's move to agenda item 5 on status of approved capital projects. And do we have Mr. Eckenroth on Zoom with us tonight?
Yes, sir.
Jesse, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I guess we'll start off by asking you to either discuss these projects one at a time or call upon the appropriate staff member to give us a status of these approved capital projects. So the first one is the inline hockey project, and I know we've got someone from Olympia here to answer any questions that we have. But Jesse, would you begin the discussion on the inline hockey project?
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to just kind of give everyone an update on the inline hockey project and the status of the project, where we're at with it right now. So I have developed a list of some change orders that we've encountered as we've come along the project. Most of the change orders are a result of the city asking for some additional work to be done on the project. We've been able to keep those change orders relatively minor. However, there's more of a major change order coming up as far as paint is concerned. The plans and specifications were absent a detail for painting the structure. So we've kind of gotten together and thought, what can we do to protect the structure? We've asked the contractor to give us the cost for painting the structure. It's only primered right now, so it comes primered from the factory. So what we're looking at right now is if we do all the change orders that are before us, including the paint, it's going to put us about $20,000 over budget on the project. And that's with taking some of the concrete sidewalks out that aren't imperative as part of the project. They go around the soccer field. That got the cost down a little bit, but it's a pretty big structure, so painting it's almost $43,000. I think it's important to paint that structure to keep it from rusting in the future, to keep that primer from chalking down. It's exposed to the UV rays on many of those steel beams. They aren't all covered. So that was really the impetus for bringing the inline hockey project forward. Olympians working towards getting the steel structure erected. They've had some weather challenges and some challenges from the manufacturer actually coming out to installing that, but it looks to be on track now. So that's kind of the impetus for why I wanted to talk to you about change orders this evening.
questions for Mr. Eckenroth?
I have a
Please.
question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jesse, when do we have to allocate those funds for that to be painted? Do we have to do it in this year's budget? Or make an amendment to this year's budget?
Yeah, the painting is, so it's something that I recently discovered that there wasn't actually a spec to paint it. And that the paint, it needs to happen, it should happen before the fabric goes on top. So once the fabric goes on top of the shade structure and the ice rinks go in, or the barrier walls, to get in there afterwards to spray all that with the fabric in the way and the rinks built out, you'd probably be twice as, the cost would probably be twice as high and you wouldn't do as good of a job. So we'd want to get on the painting right away. To make the project go as smoothly as possible, it'd be ideal if the painter could paint right behind the folks who are erecting it. So as they erect one section of roof structure, they can be painting right behind it. So those dollars, I wouldn't really feel comfortable spending those dollars until we got some direction from the board. But yes, those dollars, if we get direction from the board, we'd want to spend those dollars right away in this year.
Okay, so my next question is, we have a formal quote for that from Olympian?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're going to have to allocate an additional $20,000, is that correct?
The painting bid came in at right around, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, they came in right around $43,000. We got 3 different bids for it from Olympian. We've been able to reduce some of the work, so we took some concrete sidewalk off. That got us to where right now we're at about $20,000 under budget if we paint the entire structure. So what I would advise is actually to budget the full $43,000 for painting, and that will cover any other incidentals that may come up between now and then and save us from coming back to do another budget adjustment.
Okay, so we got 3 separate bids, and this is the best one that we had, was the $43,000, is that right?
I think they were all right around 41, 42, 43, 44, somewhere right around there. They were all in the ballpark. I think the gentleman who had the $43,000 quote was able to get to it the quickest and guaranteed us the fastest.
Okay, that was my next question. What's the availability of the people to do the painting so that it doesn't hold up the project?
And Josh is there, or I'm sorry, Wes is there from Olympian. He might be able to answer that project better than I, but our goal was for that painter to come in right behind as that building gets put up, and it gets put up in sections, because they're going to put it up in sections, to have the painter come right behind and paint in sections as well.
Okay, so how soon do we need to get an ordinance together? Because that has to go through 2 readings at BOMA to be able to allocate those funds. How soon do you need the painting to be done at this point?
We'd like to get a verbal lease by the 15th of October, next weekend.
Well, that's not going to give us enough time to pass the, we have 2 readings, and they're 2 separate weeks apart, plus it has to go
Right, and then
before a committee.
the people that we work with, we want to use is CIP Paint. The owner there is very, very, workable with us, and he's a very nice guy, and he will understand. But like I said, if we get a verbal, I know if they got to prove it, I really would like to jump on it. But he did say it'll probably take 2 weeks total to get the entire structure painted if it was there by itself, but that gives me less time to get my other items and scope done. So that's why we want to try to follow behind as fast as we can.
Okay, Jesse, it sounds like there's a sense of urgency here. I don't know, can we make a motion to have an ordinance drawn up to that effect to move this forward?
Yes, I do think that's an appropriate motion. Will it need to go to Finance Committee?
Finance doesn't meet until the last
I know.
Tuesday in October, so as long as when does Public Works meet?
The last week.
So would it be appropriate for it to go before General Committee? Because they meet next Tuesday.
Yes, you can make that appropriate. It just needs to go before a committee.
Okay,
I would like to see you attend that committee meeting, and then we can move that
yes,
forward next.
I certainly will, and then it can go first reading if we put it on the
Tuesday.
agenda the same evening, if we
Yep.
so approve that. And then it can go before finance, before the second reading.
Yep.
And although it does require 2 readings, I think the contractor would get a good feeling if it passes unanimously,
Yes.
you know,
At the first reading.
the first reading, that you could move forward on that.
That'd be great, because on our end, you know, Friday, we're tentatively scheduling a crane to start working through the weekend, and next week, we got a full week of sun. So if we get a chance to get to it next week, anytime, that'd be great to start painting before it rains again, but it don't look like rain's coming for next week, so.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments from our Parks Director about it? Or Public Works? Okay, thank you. I move that we create an ordinance ready for general committee for next week to allocate the $43,000 in the form of an ordinance.
For the painting.
For the painting, yes,
Second.
thank you.
Okay, we have a proper motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, with no discussion, well, I do have one question. The paint that we're using, it's a proper type of paint to prevent rusting in the future, correct?
Yes, sir. The manufacturer recommended any type of exterior paint, dry fall, whatever is required. We actually asked our painters to get a recommendation. So our suppliers are either PPG, Sherwin-Williams, and these past 2 days, we've called suppliers just to make sure there's availability, and I'm supposed to get an answer tomorrow on where that will be for us to be able to ship it here and have it ready.
Okay.
So I'm making sure we have it. So,
Okay.
very
Thank you
good.
very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate
All
it.
right, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? It carries unanimously. Mr. Eckenroth, can you see that an ordinance is drafted by Mr. Bradley? And I guess, do we all 3 want to be sponsors on that?
Yeah,
Have any
that'll be
objection?
fine.
Okay, and we 3 members would be sponsors. Can you get that ordinance ready for general committee Tuesday night?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Along that line, Mr. Robinson, do you see, or Jesse, or Andy, any additional change orders coming? Any additional work that we hadn't planned? Do you anticipate any?
Not for the documents that we have, no. The change orders Jesse was discussing is allocated.
Oh, need you to go up there, I'm sorry.
No, none at this time. With the drawings, what we're drawing, everything seems to line up correctly. We just have a really small window this next month to pave, to paint, and to get all the other materials that are coming here. So on my end, you know, unless weather stops me, you know, we're going to do the best we can to get to the contracted date that we got to.
So what is the estimated completion date as of today?
The contract reads that we had a certain number of days, and right now I think we're at like December 18th total contract days to get finished. But we're trying to push further sooner than that. So that's what I'm shooting for, though, is to get done per our contract date at this point.
We have a tournament, Mr. Gilly, scheduled when out there?
And, you know, us missing the September 22nd through the 30th of rain, and then this past week.
I understand.
And on our end, we're pushing, we're trying,
I understand.
doing the best we can.
And the supply chain has to be bad, too, with everything.
Yes, labor
going on.
chain, people,
Yeah.
men, crew, you know.
Okay, good. Any other questions for the contractor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your effort. And Mr. Eckenroth, thank you and the staff for being good stewards of this project and for finding ways to save on other areas to get this project done as close to budget as possible. So thank you. No other discussion on that. Let's move to Fire Station number 7. And I think at our last discussion, we were waiting on the architect to submit plans. So who will lead that discussion, Mr. Eckenroth?
Mr. Bush, Chief Bush, are you in attendance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you mind please giving an update on that?
No, sir, sure don't. So just to kind of give you an update on that, we've been in contact with them. I know as early as last week, there was some conversations about stormwater and runoff. I think there was an email back and forth between Miss Sarah, myself, Mr. Eckenroth, and Keith Free and everybody that's on that committee for building Station 7. So we're still moving forward with the project. I think it's right where it needs to be as far as movement. I mean, we've got some temporary drawings. They just have not put anything out to bid or anything like that yet.
So we don't have any estimates from the architect of what it may cost.
There's some conversations early on that it could be maybe 15 to 20% more than what Station 2 was.
And I talked to the mayor briefly about the negotiations with the county.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us any update other than the negotiations are continuing?
Mr. Eckenroth, do you want me to answer that, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's what.
And not trying to be disrespectful, I just want to make sure.
Just be careful. I
Yes, sir.
understand.
I've had some conversations with Mr. Taylor, Chris Taylor with the county, and the MOU has been submitted back to the mayor. I have not physically seen that myself, and I do not know if that's been sent. It was not sent to me. But through a conversation, Mr. Taylor has said that the county has made their adjustments and has sent it back to the mayor.
Okay,
I can confirm that's been sent back.
okay, that it's in the mayor's hands.
Well, it's in his email box probably. I don't.
Yes, I
know
haven't
it's
seen it,
been
like I
sent.
said, but I do know that conversations, I think last time Mr. Eckenroth and the mayor and myself sat down and talked, the mayor told me just to, and Mr. Eckenroth, just to make some conversations, follow-up conversations to kind of see where we're at, because it's been a little while since the last time we sent ours up to them, and that's the conversation I got as early as yesterday, is that email had been sent back to the mayor.
And it's important to get a resolution on that because that will determine how many bays that we build. Is that right?
It will help with expediting the whole project, not
Yes.
just a bay. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief Bush, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Bush, you mentioned that it was going to be 15 to 20% more than Station 2. Is that correct?
That's what it's looking like
But
right now.
Station 2 has all the administrative offices and a much larger square footage.
It's almost double.
So what's the square footage per square footage, versus Station 2 square footage cost versus Station 7 square footage cost?
It is
Do you have
almost
that number?
double.
Oh, my.
And product is, I mean, it's just, as you heard them speak about the rinks, products are just astronomically high. They're difficult getting here and then finding the folks to work to do that. So it's problematic all across all areas.
So refresh my memory on how much we originally allocated in the bond for this Fire Hall 7.
2.5.
And how much do you think it's going to cost?
Based off information, just in conversations with the architects, in excess of $4 million.
So we have to find over 1.5 million, not including change orders.
1.8.
I'm sorry, 1.8.
That's okay.
Including change orders. Sorry, my
That's okay.
math was defective. I know that's surprising, but it wasn't.
And the square footage of Station 7, if I may so speak about it, is we've cut everywhere that we could cut. We've done everything that we can do. I mean, and I think if you brought the committee in here together, Mr. Free, Sarah, Codes, Greg Story, Mr. Eckenroth. We've made every adjustment that we can certainly make to try to keep that cost down.
So to me, it sounds imperative and important that the county partner with us for Station 7.
It's pretty crucial, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we all knew that the cost of construction was increasing, but
Yeah.
that's bad news, I guess, for the city. Yeah, we'll have to come up with another game plan on that, the rest of that money. Chief, any other news?
No,
on
sir,
that?
the engine company is on target. I mean, we've not got any pre-build dates yet, but I spoke with the vendor. We've purchased the engine because we saved, Mr. Eckenroth, what was it, 20% or no, I'm sorry, 2 to 3% by prepaying. So we've got a little 40, 50,000 that we've got extra from prepaying the apparatus, but that's on point. Build out on that's 11 to 12 months.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more, Mr. Chairman. How far away are we from actual construction?
So the conversation's been back and forth. You know, the concern is if we put it out to bid right now and it comes in at 4.3, let's just say later this year that the prices begin to drop, we're locked in. So I think we're doing everything we can to try to hold on to the fact that maybe the prices will come down some. Typically in the winter months, folks are really hurting for work. There's not as much going on in the winter months. And so that conversation has kind of gone back and forth that we may wait till around November or so, which is only really 30 days away.
Yeah, sure is. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I know we've applied for a grant for staff. Are there any other grants for the construction that we can apply for?
There
that
is
you're
not
aware
for
of?
new construction, but you can apply for grants for remodeling. Yes, sir. And I did catch some bad news, and this is going to catch Mr. Eckenroth off guard because I received those today before I came up here. We did not get the AFG, which was for the air packs and everything else, nor did we get the Safer Grant. We got notification today that we did not get awarded either one of those.
And that was worth about 700,000?
The AFG was worth about 700,000. I think the Safer Grant was 100% for 3 years. So it was not going to cost us anything for 3 years. And we got declined on both ends. My concern with the air packs, and this may not be the place to talk about this, is we're going to do a budget review. Mr. Eckenroth that wants to do that in the middle of the year is, again, with shipping parts, we're going to have them in place by October of next year. My concern is, what if we run into a window that we run into a snag with shipping and the materials aren't there, and we can't get them here by October of next year? And they have to be replaced by October of next year. But maybe that's a story for a different day.
So I guess we'll apply for them next year.
Oh, 100%, yes, sir. We've not gotten them before in the past, but typically you apply. I think we applied July, around there, and that's a crapshoot of whether you're going to get accepted or not. We may very well not get it. We certainly can't roll the dice thinking that we are going to get it, and then October hit us in the face and we don't have air packs.
Mr. Chairman, okay. Did they give you a reason why you weren't
They typically don't. They just
You're
encourage us.
awarded?
They typically just encourage us to reapply when the next year opens. They give you some pointers, but it's the same pointers they give you when you never get them. But how those things work is we submit them and they go before a review committee. And I don't know who's on that review committee. They don't tell you that. And there's no telling how many people apply for those. You got to remember, we got a Safer Grant 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And then we got an AFG just last year. And I'm not saying that played a part in it, but obviously it could have very well, and we don't know that. They won't tell us whether it did or did not.
So they try to spread, you think they try to spread the love?
Well, there is some consistencies with other departments. I see other departments apply, and they may get a couple in 2 years in a row. I don't know that there's any rhyme or reason to that. My grant writer is pretty distraught about it. He does a really fantastic job for us. It's not a reflection of how he's writing the grants. I mean, he does a bang-up job for us. It's just the nature of the business.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have anything else.
Please, go ahead.
I have a Robert question, I think, and if you're ready for it. And I absolutely don't know. I'm just looking for dollars out there somewhere. Any of this COVID money that is earmarked to come to us from the state, we haven't totally decided on what we're going to do with it yet, or at least I don't think we have. Are we supposed to get like $5 million from the state, from the federal?
Oh,
to the
sorry,
state?
yes,
Is that
ARP
right?
funds.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I heard code.
Any of that money be moved to air packs, fire halls, building of fire halls? Any possibility? Can you even say that I'm not sure and I'll check on that?
I will check on that, and I am not 100% right now. It is intended to be one-time use in nature. However, I haven't heard if the final rule has come out quite yet, so I'll double check and get back with you on that one.
Building a fire hall would be a one-time use?
Right.
Can you check on, I know I'm putting on you a spot, can you check on that? And,
Yes, sir.
Maybe shoot an email out to this committee, and Mr. Eckenroth, the mayor, and the chief in the next day or so?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. And Mr. Eckenroth, you're working on that as well, aren't you? I know you've talked to the comptroller's office, and you're up to speed on as much as is available, right?
Yes, sir.
Keep forgetting he's out there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Just my preliminary looking at the qualifications under federal law, I think for sure we could use that money on the air conditioning unit for purification purposes, like we used at the senior center. So I think there are some applications, but that's a good question, because we're going to have to come up with some money or put the project off. I mean, that's the two options that we have, so.
I still have some hope. I still hope that with our negotiating group that we can get something fostered with the county. Mr. Taylor from the county seems to be encouraging about that. So I do think that we'll find some common ground somewhere to meet upon. Now, what that looks like as far as a set amount, I don't know. But I do think that we'll get something and some common ground to meet upon. I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, Chief, would you and Mr. Eckenroth and the mayor inform us just as soon as we have any word from the county on that?
Yes, sir. As soon as I see it, I'll talk with Mr. Eckenroth, and we'll report back to whomever that we need to report back to.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If no other questions, Mary's Magical Place, the flood protection plan. Sarah? Ms. Locke, I'm sorry.
Okay. So Mary's Magical Place is still in design. The preliminary design plans are complete. They are working with FEMA to work through some concerns FEMA had regarding the flood mapping through that area. They've had to make some updates to the model. That was submitted approximately 2 months ago. They have not received comments yet, but once they do receive either comment or approval, they'll be able to finalize those plans. And then we can move forward to construction. Director Gilly also has informed us that we cannot begin construction until the other inline rinks are available, so at least November. We have requested an estimate from the city's contractor. We have not received that amount yet.
And has all this rain affected the Mary's Magical Place this year, Mr. Gilly?
Not the recent rains, no, sir.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that. The next is are any questions on that? Next is the Walton Ferry Old Shackle Island Improvement Project. This is the straightening out of Walton Ferry across Main Street. So
Yes.
this project's been going on for
Quite a while.
quite a while. So, Ms.
Yes.
Locke, you want to give us an update on that? And I think you've passed out a sheet.
I did. I had a handout because there are quite a few figures that I'm going to go over. In August, early August of this year, 2021, the mayor received Amendment 2 to the contract with TDOT, indicating that the construction estimate had increased, which we knew that it was going to increase, and we were prepared for the 20% of that cost. We were advised ahead of time. However, when the mayor asked for advisement on, executing that agreement, I started to investigate the available finances and just make sure that we had everything in place. Upon doing so, I found that the current funding in the TIP is, total funding is only $3.15 million. That's an 80-20 split, so that leaves $2.52 million that are federal funds. The remainder is local. The total project cost in Amendment 2 is shown as $15.246 million. Any overage from what's in the TIP is local responsibility. This project is managed by TDOT, but they do not have any funding for this project. The 20% that we have available of the construction cost that was requested with Amendment 2 is $1.8 million approximately. Previously, we have paid $188,000 for PE and $1.2 million roughly for right-of-way, which totals approximately $1.2 million that we've paid so far on this project. Also, just a couple of weeks ago, the mayor received an agreement from TDOT for CSX for the railroad coordination for this project. And that agreement also is requiring $1.2 million for CSX.
So we're looking at
Wow.
11 or $12 million,
Yes.
city portion.
That's correct.
Cost.
On the table I provided, the red would be the city's portion after what we've already paid in and after federal funding. That would be $12.55 million. So I have gone to the MPO and discussed with them to see if they had any Federal Reserve funds that we might be able to obligate to this project. What they have is nowhere near what we would need. It's approximately $2 million, but we would also have to use it very quickly, which means we would have to provide $10 million to construct fairly immediately. So, moving forward, the options are we can, in speaking with the MPO, within the next couple of months, they will put out a call for projects for the next TIP, and we can submit this project. In speaking with her, she felt very confident that we would be eligible for a significant appropriation through that, since this project apparently had never requested an increase in funding since, I want to say it was 2002, maybe. So not only that, the project has been through right-of-way. So it's ready to, relatively ready to construct, and that also would rank it pretty highly on the project list through the TIP. Now, we would submit this, and then this next year, 2022, the MPO will review projects, eligibility, rank them, and make award. So we most likely would not have funding available until 2023. That's one option. Another, of course, is to ask TDOT for funding contributions to this project. I don't know that they would contribute $12 million, since it's a state intersection, but the majority of the widening is not on a state route. So they may contribute some. I'm not sure what that level would look like. And additionally, something that we will pursue is asking if there's a possibility to phase the project. So see if maybe we can just phase the, just sections of it, break it up to where the city could move forward with constructing part of it while we get the rest of the funding in place. We have not received a response on that yet.
And the railroad, explain to me the cost associated with the railroad.
The cost associated with the railroad is for them, there's a lot of signal and electrical work that they have to do to coordinate that with the traffic signals. Also for their flagging. I brought that document just to double check, but it's all associated with all of CSX's involvement with the project to coordinate and.
That's fine. That's fine. That's their estimate of what
is.
they'll spend.
Equipment, material, labor.
$12.5 million at this point, but we're hoping that through the TIP, we'll get additional funding
Yes.
for that. So I guess we don't do anything until we get word back from them.
Yes, there really isn't anything for us to do right now other than just see if we can work out a phasing for the project. It may be difficult at this stage for how far along it is, but that's an avenue we can investigate.
Questions?
I have some question and comments. I'm totally dumbfounded.
Yeah.
When we first allocated the funds for the right-of-way, which was back in, if my memory serves me correct, around 2011 or so,
Okay.
we had already invested, or TDOT had invested, if my memory serves me correct, around $400,000 or $500,000 in engineering at that time. And then we had to come up with the $1.2 million for our 20% match for the right-of-way. So we've already spent that $1.2 million for the right-of-way.
Yes.
We don't have $12 million for this project. I mean,
No.
very frankly, we just do not have it. And I can't, at this point, justify that expense for the benefit it would provide the city at this point. What happens if we just say we can't do this? We can't do this within the next couple years.
The mayor would need to submit a letter on letterhead saying that we are pursuing additional funding, and that we would need to put the project on hold. And that's what it would take to put the project on hold.
Would TDOT have to approve to put that project on hold so that we don't lose at least that $1.2 million?
I would think that they would yes, I believe that they would, since we've had a contract with them, because Amendment 1 was executed in 2017. So
When did we find out that the total cost of our share of the cost would be $12 million? When was this information?
August and September, I've been working through that. August was when we received Amendment 2. That was really my first involvement with this project.
I'm just flabbergasted. Thank you, Sarah.
You're
for the
welcome.
update.
So let's look at the rosy side of it, I guess. Let's say that even if TIP agreed to fund 80% of this 12.5 million, 20% of that is still required by the city.
That's correct. Yeah.
So the question is, until we hear from the TIP, do we stop spending money on this?
I think we're at the point now where we've stopped spending money. We can't can't spend any more money until they're ready to pull the trigger, but when they're ready to pull the trigger, we've got to be ready with some money.
Yes,
And we don't have that kind of money.
correct.
And 20% would be what,
2.4 million?
2.4 million? And we don't have that budgeted,
No,
that kind of money
no.
budgeted.
Now, by 2023, if we were to obtain additional funding, I think it's very likely we could budget that amount for that time.
Mr. Chairman, and if I remember correctly, the construction costs back in the beginning of the teens, 2011 or so, we estimated the construction costs at that time would be around $6 million, like between 5 and 6 million.
Okay,
And our share would have been the 20% of that. So I see where that would escalate. But that amendment too, what is that? Is that the escalation of just the construction part of the costs? Or are they increasing the scope of the project?
the scope did increase, and I'm not certain whether that increase in scope originated with the city or whether it originated with the state. But I believe the previous termini were from Volunteer down to Imperial, I believe, and it's been extended to include down to Noakes. And the right-of-way also did increase.
Based on TDOT increasing the scope of the project, or the city
I'm not
increasing it,
certain.
or a combination of both?
Maybe a combination of both. I wasn't involved in those conversations when the scope was increased. I'm not certain where that originated.
Okay, because that's literally double the amount of what we had anticipated.
Yes. And certainly a portion of it is the increased construction costs, especially related to
I realize that,
asphalt. That has
yeah.
gone up significantly, but
Sure. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
you're welcome.
So the amendment that we're talking about, that's increased the scope, which correspondingly increased the cost. We don't know where those modifications originated, either from the state or from the city.
Yes, I haven't received clarification on that.
But you're asking, so we'll have that information.
Yes.
So if it's from the city standpoint, maybe we can reduce the scope
Yes.
to reduce the cost.
Yeah.
Or phase it as an option to maybe construct that portion later. It would be a benefit to the area to do that at some point, but it's possible we could revise it if it were a city request. I would just have to see what TDOT's response is.
Yeah, if you'll let me know when you receive that
Okay.
information, and I'll call another Capital Projects Committee
Okay,
meeting at that time, so that we can get some updates on that project.
all right.
But does the committee agree until we get that information, we need to stop spending money on it?
Yes, this committee person does.
Alderman
I
Brown?
don't think we have any money left to spend. Do we, Robert? Sarah?
Can't speak to the overall budget,
Yeah,
but as
I
far
don't-
as what we have budgeted for this project, we only have 1.8.
And have we spent that? We haven't spent that.
No, that was the 20% of the construction cost. We were prepared to provide that, but not
But we
not the
haven't
rest.
allocated those funds yet.
No.
We haven't allocated 1.8. We haven't allocated any funds for construction at all for that project yet.
That
We
money's-
have.
that
In the
money's
budget.
encumbered.
The 1.8 is in the budget.
Yeah.
It is,
Oh,
yeah,
It has to be there
yes.
if they call for it, but actually, the 1.8 needs to be, whatever you said it needs to be. It needs to go from there to there.
Yes.
And so,
So the 1.8 is, I have not received any other requests for funds outside of that 1.8, and then now the CSX, the 1.2 million. But from TDOT, we haven't received any requests for any overages at this point. but we can anticipate that we would receive those probably nearing the end of the project. We would need to be prepared to pay those if we execute this amendment.
So do you anticipate any cost on this project, other than the full 20%? Engineering, are there any more engineering studies or environmental studies that the city would have to pay for in preparation of this construction?
Not as of today, but if we do put the project off until 2023, most certainly we would probably need a reevaluation of the environmental document. And if we do any phasing of the project or revision, changing the termini, that would require additional engineering.
Yes, Alderman Brown?
A question for you, and this is, make sure I word this correctly. I want to know what you need from us to move forward. I know you're moving forward on getting some information and seeing about this, seeing about that. What kind of decision do you need from this committee and ultimately maybe need from BOMA? I don't know that this committee can say that we're going to put that project on hold. That probably needs to be a BOMA decision.
Okay.
And I don't know that right now, Mr. Chairman, I don't want Bowman to weigh in on that pretty quick. Because if the state pulls some triggers, then you've got to make decisions pretty fast on what you're going to do. So talk to us a little bit about a time frame for you, what coming across your office, your desk, what your gut feeling is. You know, has the mayor been in conversation with TDOT or MPO? You know, so.
Okay.
Help us help you is what I'm saying.
Sure. So I agree. I would like to get the additional information before we put the project formally on hold. And that's something that the mayor would need to do. They have pushed the letting date for this project out to, I believe it's June of 22, I believe. So we do have some time, and we haven't executed either one of these agreements, of course, because we don't have the funding. So as far as timeline, I don't know that we're under pressure at the moment to make a fast decision. Essentially, I've been in communication with TDOT. They know that we're working through some funding issues. I've asked my contact in their contracts division if TDOT would assist with funding. They didn't think that was a possibility, but they are aware that we've encountered this situation. So I think at this point, what I'm doing is communicating the status so that this committee is aware while we gather additional information, and then we will report back and have a plan to move forward at that time, if that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Locke.
More good news. Okay, let's talk about the Sanders Ferry multi-use path,
Okay.
status on that.
Okay, we, last time we spoke at Public Works Committee, we were waiting on updated core permits for this project and environmental reevaluation. That has been completed, so our consultant is currently working on finalizing the bid documents and all the information to submit to TDOT for approval to bid for construction once again.
And is that an 80-20 share too?
That's correct, yes.
And that 20%, estimated 20%'s been put in the budget?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. My favorite subject in the signal optimization project.
Yes.
And I've included both of them there. I'm hoping that we have some good news tonight.
Unfortunately, I don't have much new. I did request an update from the submittal. We submitted revised plans on August 20th to TDOT. my contact for local programs, the program monitor, informed me that they were not sent out to the divisions within TDOT, which is their responsibility, until September 22nd. Apparently, they were in and out of the office. So those have just really entered review just not even 2 weeks, or 2 weeks ago, I guess. So I would anticipate we will not hear anything back for at least 2 more weeks on the review of the revised construction documents.
Okay, but we're not aware of any new issues the state has brought forward at this point
That's correct.
on that. So
Yes.
if they approve it, if they say it's fine,
Yes,
then it goes out to bid?
that's correct.
Okay. And that is 100% funding?
It is up to the amount that we have left in the grant, which I want to say is approximately $800,000. We will have some responsibility additional to that.
Some financial responsibility?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Questions? Stop 30 in Drake's Creek. This is trying to get that intersection out of the floodplain so that emergency vehicles can respond
Yes.
and traffic can respond. Update on that?
So our consultant has been working through a reevaluation of the environmental document on that project as well. It was submitted to TDOT, and we received comments back, or the consultant did, and so they're working through those comments, and they should be resubmitting. They received the comments today, actually, so I would anticipate a resubmittal within the next week or two. They were not extensive.
And then after that, we start purchasing right away?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Questions? Number 8, the roundabout at
Okay.
Durham Farms and
So-
Anderson Lane.
That isn't going through preliminary design now. They anticipate submitting the preliminary plans and a preliminary estimate by mid-October. So I anticipate seeing that within the next week or two, hopefully. The current schedule shows that right-of-way plans will be submitted to the city for review mid-February.
And we're still, Robert, we're still receiving money from Durham Farms and those other developments over there on the informal impact fees, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're still receiving that money on those projects. Yes.
How much do we have in that fund, Robert?
The majority of that fund was, I don't want to say depleted, was utilized for this roundabout project. So the FY22 collections will be basically the balance. I think we estimated 80,000. I could be wrong, 60 to 80,000 in revenue this fiscal year. However, I can give you some updated projections shortly after this, if you'd like.
So this future year, you don't know what the projections are yet, right?
Not quite, no,
Okay.
for this current
So
fiscal
the
year.
60 to 80,000 that was collected already, we've already spent that on engineering and
No.
such?
Originally, we've collected in excess of $650,000
Okay.
from permit fees. However, that has been appropriated for this roundabout project. And so as far as like a balance goes, that's already been encumbered. And any revenues we collect this fiscal year would be essentially the balance as we're talking about it today.
And the roundabout is going to cost about $650, right?
Sorry. That is what we budgeted for it. We haven't received the
remember, yeah.
estimate yet, but yes, there's $650,000 in the budget.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Sarah.
Problem.
Thank you. Rugby restrooms, the restrooms at the rugby field. Mr. Gilly?
Brian Silkwood with the rugby group is working with Jesse and the planning department and working through some ADA requirements that are going to have to be coming. He's got to get a revised site plan to get to the staff before we go forward with that. He's gotten a preliminary estimate of cost. It looks like, and Jesse, if he's still on, can correct me, I believe the last cost I saw was around 180 to 200,000. We have 150,000 in a special project account for that's budgeted for this year. We have met with the rugby group and asked them to see if they can, when and if the actual bid goes out, if it comes at the price we're looking at, we've asked them to look at ways to help fund any overages of 150,000. Jesse can add to that if he's still on.
Oh, I think you got it right, Mr. Gilly. And I think Mr. Silkwood's pretty close to having his plans wrapped up.
Good.
That's it.
Okay. And you might want to stay up there, Mr. Gilly. The park grants, I know that we've got a $500,000 grant, but do we also have a grant for LED lights?
So
update us.
the two grants that are out there right now, one of them is called a RTP grant, Recreational Trails Program grant. That's through the state that the Friends of Indian Lake Peninsula applied for, and you all passed a resolution just acknowledging that they were going to apply for that. That will be for trails and trailhead at the Beatty Farm. That's one separate grant that's for $200,000. The city will not participate in construction on that. Our job with that grant, if we get it, will be just to accept the property once that grant is constructed. The Lprf grant through the state, which is a 50-50 match, where the state would give us $500,000, our share would be the other 50% of that, would include LED lights at rugby, 2 LED light poles at soccer, and a turf soccer field. So those LED lights are within the Lprf grant. Both of those grants are the grants we had to have the park master plan done for to even apply. We applied in September. We should find out hopefully November, December if we receive the grants.
So has there been another LED light grant that the city has received?
No, sir.
That staff is aware of?
No, sir. Not to my knowledge. Not in the Parks Department. I don't know about other departments.
Yes, not for parks specifically, but through the COVID funding through GNRC, we were awarded $135,000 for West Main Street LED conversion.
That's for Main Street only.
Yes, we had to provide exactly which street lights we were proposing, and they were for West Main Street.
And those lights are owned by NES?
They are.
So that should reduce the city cost for those lights, correct?
It should, yes. Yeah.
Good. Well, congratulations. That's some good news that we
Very
have.
good.
It is.
I was hoping Mr. Gilly would tell us that we've received the other grant, but maybe that'll be another date. Okay. And Sarah, while you're there, any questions regarding the grants?
No. Job well done.
Yeah. The exit at Lot 3, or the lighted exit 3, I'm sorry.
Yes, that project was put out to bid by TDOT. They have awarded a low bidder for the construction of that light. And the construction is, a completion time on that project is listed on or before June 20th of 2022. June 30th of 2022.
So they have awarded a contract.
Yes. So
And the contractor has almost a year to finish it, to do it, until June of next year?
June of this next year, yes.
But we anticipate them to do that before then, don't we?
Yes and no. The lead time on the poles, unfortunately, has been an issue. It was an issue when we did Bluegrass and Stop 30. At that time, there was approximately a 9-month lead time. I would anticipate it being close to that now.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, you know that area has two other, actually, 3 other lights between that little span, so that'll make 4 lights.
Yes.
Now, how confident are you that we can synchronize those lights so that the traffic isn't outrageous during the rush hour times? Because that is such a small area for 4 lights to be in.
It is. Yes.
And how are you prepared?
So
And are you working with consultants to do that?
we actually, when we were discussing with the consultant that was selected for this project, we requested that they include synchronization with the other 2 at Caldwell and the existing at the other exit. And so those will be synchronized with this project. Now, Main Street is not planned to be synchronized. That was outside of the scope of what TDOT wanted to include, but they did include the other 2.
Okay, because you have literally 4 lights. Well, if you don't want to count the Main Street light. So it'll be 4 lights, including the exit ramp, the on-ramp, the one coming off the exit at Center Point, and Caldwell. So there's 4 lights, not counting Main Street. There'll be 4 lights. Right now, there's 3.
I was thinking there were 2. There's Caldwell and the off-ramp,
Caldwell, the
the
off-ramp
westbound ramp.
And then the on-ramp. There's,
On-ramp doesn't have a light.
Yeah, I don't think there's only 2, and they actually run off the same cabinet,
okay.
which is interesting, but there's only the 2. So there will be 3, not including Main Street,
Yeah.
and those 3 will be synchronized.
And they're so close together.
They are. I agree,
Okay,
which is why we requested they include them.
okay, good.
Yeah,
Perfect, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Locke? Let's move to item B, Stormwater Infrastructure. And I think the staff added this item on, so
Yes.
tell us what we need to hear on stormwater
So,
infrastructure.
stormwater has been rolling right along. Trace has accomplished several projects this fiscal year already. What was budgeted in drainage control under our stormwater budget was $300,000 for this fiscal year, which was significantly lower than last year. So far, we are showing current expenditures of approximately $500,000. We anticipate invoices of approximately $200,000 for work that's already been completed. And while we are significantly over, the fund balance for our stormwater account is very healthy from what was existing from last fiscal year. And so this is a notification that we will be coming to BOMA with an ordinance to appropriate more money for our drainage control, as we've been seeing a lot of benefit from the work we've been doing and improving the situation around the city.
This is for Robert and Sarah. Now, the balance in our stormwater fund isn't it around $2 million?
I believe it's closer to about 1.3. We did appropriate around 500,000 for Mary's Magical Place.
Okay.
And that portion is encumbered as
Okay.
well. But it has been hovering traditionally in prior years around 2 million, so.
Yeah, our collections are around, if I remember, what, 2.2 million or 2.1 million?
2.6, actually.
2.6, okay.
That's what we're projected to collect this year, this fiscal year. And after all projects are said and done, and still leaving somewhat of a balance since we only start collecting fees in November.
Right.
Somewhat of a balance in order to get us from July to November. Should be somewhere in the realm of 900,000 to $1 million, in excess of that number.
Right, and then we'll start the clock ticking again, and the
Correct.
fund will start building up again.
Right, right.
So Sarah, you said you wanted to allocate additional funds of, what, 500,000 or?
We are obtaining estimates for the work that we had planned for the remainder of this fiscal year. And then at that time, we would like to come to BOMA with an ordinance to appropriate additional funds. I imagine we'd go to finance first.
Sure, and we have plenty in that fund
Yes.
to do exactly what it's intended to do.
That's correct, yes.
So we need to spend the money on what it's intended to be spent on.
That's correct. Yes.
So I would, that's why that fund was created in the first
Yes,
place.
yes.
So, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sarah.
And from my own research, I do know that one area where the COVID money can be spent is stormwater. That's a pretty
Yes.
broad category that the federal government allows us to spend. So I think that's another opportunity for money if we need it from the federal money.
Yes. That was actually one of the reasons why we continued to spend as we were approaching the budget limit, was anticipation of those funds. But as they've taken a little bit longer to finalize all of the requirements to use those funds, we see the need to do an appropriation to cover what we have spent.
Well, it's evident, the work being done. I mean, you know, we get notified and citizens contact us and show their appreciation. So
Yes.
please pass on to the staff,
I
your
will.
staff, how much we appreciate the hard work they're doing to try to take care of all the water.
I will, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Sarah before she sits down?
No.
Okay, I added a discussion on the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, and Robert, you may be needed on this. It's my understanding, Chairman Cunningham, that we have an Infrastructure Reserve Fund. It may not be populated with any money, but we do
Yes,
have an ordinance passed creating this fund. Is that right?
correct.
What I would like the board, this committee to consider is several years ago, BOMA passed an ordinance that would create a fund for additional parkland. And based upon the consultant's report for our parks master plan, that we have plenty of land with the donation of Forest Park, with the donation of Durham, and is there another one? Beatty Farms,
Beatty.
and with Beatty Farms, that we have plenty. So, Robert, how much money do we have in that park land fund?
The Land Preservation Reserve, I believe is the
Yes.
term. We have around 190,000 right now, and appropriated in this year's budget is an additional 90,000 to add to it. So currently, between those two amounts, we've got a little over $280,000.
I'd like to put it out for discussion about moving that money over to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, and I know that will probably have to go through finance, but I'd like to just get a discussion from the members here about the pros and cons of that.
Well, can I
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
speak to
Roundtable.
that? Only because I was on the board at the time when that, when the Beatty Farm situation came to BOMA. It passed BOMA, and we did purchase that land. I did not vote in favor of purchasing the land, even though I thought it was a wonderful, novel idea, because we didn't have the funds to do that. We had to borrow 100% of those funds to the tune of $3 million to do that. Looking back at it now, it was a very good investment. It was a very, very good investment. So at that point, that's when we realized we don't have any reserves. We don't have any money in reserves to be able to do that. So that's how that ordinance came about, was that we would allocate 1% of the operating budget, right?
The prior year
1%.
operating.
Yeah, the prior year's operating budget. We would allocate 1% of that each year to fund, to have in a reserve account to either save it for future land purchases or pay for past obligations that we have done for previous land purchases, particularly the Beatty Farm. And I voted in favor of that because I thought that it was forward-thinking, looking in the future, and still be able to meet our obligation to that debt that we have created for the land purchase. Kind of sort of a mortgage. But it wasn't a mortgage, but it was a bond. Was it a?
Capital outlay
Capital
note.
outlay, no, yeah. So I still think it's a good idea to do that. Now, if we open the discussion for infrastructure, I think that's a good idea too, because we're looking into the future for infrastructure improvements. But I think they should be both separate because one, if we come up to a good deal on land purchases, we're not going to have them, we may not have the money again to allocate for those purchases, and we would have to go out again and borrow the money, which I'm not, unless it's an emergency, I'm not in favor of that like I was. That's why I didn't, my whole thing was voting against the Beatty Farm purchases because we just simply didn't have the money. So, I don't know, I'm split between that, even though I think we should have a fund, though, for the infrastructure. But I don't think we should be taking it away from our land fund. Because those are my comments. But convince me otherwise.
Well, I guess I thought of this idea after I read the Parks Master Plan, that we're above other cities with parks, with land. And in fact, we don't have the money to develop the land that we've got. So I can't imagine myself with our other needs that we have, fire station, all these other needs that we've got that I would agree to purchase land when we have land that we have not developed yet. So I just see with all of these construction projects, I just see the need for this reserve fund. I think it is forward-thinking. I think it prepares us when we do have overruns that we don't expect, that we can use it selectively in those areas instead of just leaving it in the bank for future land purchases, which I don't perceive that we will need for years and years and years and years. So that's why I brought it up for discussion. But again, I understand the thinking. Alderman Brown, you want to weigh in?
I suppose, since there's three of us, two of us have spoke. I would tend to lean strongly to keep it where it is right now, simply for the fact that we had no mechanism to save any money to purchase any land. We had to borrow every dime of it to purchase a Beatty Farm. And when you're talking $3 million versus $290,000 now, percentages are great there. You got 10% in the bank, and we borrowed $3 million. But over a period of time, that was discussed pretty hard down through this board of whether we should do that or we shouldn't do that. There was some agreement and disagreement on maybe even doing 2 or 3% for a while and then dropping back to 1%. So I think that board at that time made a wise decision. Have we funded that every year?
We did not fund it the first year, but the contributions to it are, one of the applicable items is paying off the debt, like you said, of the
Right.
Beatty Farm. So the contribution each year would be somewhere around $450,000 each
Right.
year. After we remove the payment, it equals out somewhere around $80,000 a year. So we didn't fund it that first year.
Okay. So we are using that money to pay debt down. I think at that use and paying that debt down on the Beatty Farm, basically the same what you're talking about, Eddie. We're using the money to offset some debt or some needs that we have. So I think we're probably in a pretty good spot of where we are, and I would think I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, and my thinking wasn't to be prospective in the allocation of that money, but just looking back of what we've got. I agree that moving forward, that money should continue to pay the debt down on Beatty Farms. But I'm looking at these construction costs, and I'm looking at cost overruns, and I just think that we're going to need some greater flexibility outside general revenue funds. But anyway, this was a good discussion, and we'll see how it goes in the future. Thank you. That's all I have. Any additional items that anybody would like to bring up? I do see a need to have another committee meeting after Ms. Locke gets some information on the amendment. Whose prerogative was it to add all of this cost to this project? And after we get that, I think we're going to have to make a hard decision, because of the cost.
I don't know, at this point, it's not too hard for me.
No.
Just need to get the information.
Yeah.
To make it an easier decision.
Yeah.
Hopefully something can be worked out.
Okay, that's all I have. I'm ready
Move
for.
to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, without any